Welcome to another Mon County Read Aloud. I'm sure you've heard a lot about the war between the Ukraine and Russia over the last several weeks. Instead of concentrating on that, I'd really like to do something about a special tradition that the Ukrainian people have, and that is the art of Pysanky eggs. I was lucky enough years ago to learn how to do this, although these aren't my eggs because mine were not nearly this good. But a friend of mine gave me 2 of her Ukrainian Pysanky eggs. And I thought I would share a story I found describing how these are made using a kiska, which is a little tool, basically a stick of wood with a funnel strapped to it that is heated over a candle. And once it's heated, then you lay it on a piece of beeswax, and the wax is then heated and goes into the funnel, and then you write with the tip of it onto the eggs. I think the story will explain it a little better than I can. But this is a story that I believe is written by a Ukrainian lady called Cathy Witbeck. And it's about a young girl learning Pysanky in the story about Pysanky Promise. So let me share the story about how this tradition is carried on. The dancers spun in a flash of colors. Ribbons flew and the layers of her skirt flared. Alina clapped and cheered with her family. The smell of pierogies, cabbage rolls, and kibasi filled the air. The Ukrainian Dance Festival was just one of the reasons that she loved spring. When she got home, Alina looked for her grandmother in the sunroom. Alina knew she loved spring too, because every year Grandma grew flowers to make the yard colorful. But Alina didn't find her working with her plants. Instead, Grandma was staring aimlessly out the window. Something was wrong. She bit her lip and slipped away. She found her mother in the kitchen washing dishes, and she picked up a dish towel and asked, "Why is Grandma looking so sad?" Alina's mother nodded. "Well, I think it's because last night when Grandma tried to make a pysanka, her hands shook too much to make a good straight line." "But what's wrong with her?" "Well, Grandma's new medicine helps her to breathe, but it does make her hands shake. And making Pysanky has always been one of her favorite things to do, and now she's afraid she can't do it anymore." "Oh, that would be a shame, because I love looking at all of the eggs that she's made in our china cabinet." Alina found her father in the barn feeding the cats. "Dad, I don't want Grandma to be sad." Her father scratched his chin and said, "I've been thinking about that too, and I think your grandmother is sad because she feels that she's missed her chance to teach you how to make Pysanky eggs." "But doesn't Aunt Viera know how to make them too?" "She does." "Well, what if I offered to help her with spring cleaning? Do you think that she would help me make Pysanky, and then I could make one to surprise Grandma?" "I doubt she would turn you down on that offer." So, on the first day of spring cleaning, Alina went to help Viera, and they dusted all morning. After lunch, the Pysanky lessons were to start. But then Viera opened a book and said, "I'd really like to share with you about the history of Pysanky and have you learn a little bit about what is involved with this." The word Pysanky is related to the word pisati, which means to write. Pysanky eggs are written with a message on them, either in colors or in symbols. For example, a spider stands for patience, a horse means prosperity, and a rose means beauty and wisdom. So if I wanted to tell my piano teacher thank you for being patient with me, I would make her an egg with spiders on it?" Alina said, wrinkling up her nose. "That's exactly right," said Viera with a chuckle. "Each color also has a meaning as well. White could mean purity, light, or innocence. Orange would be good for Grandma, Alina said, because she is very strong. And I think the people in the Ukraine and President Zelensky would also be a good thing to give them eggs that had orange on them because of their strength right now. And she goes on and says, but I think Grandma also likes blue for the blue sky over the farm. And blue stands for good health, so I think that would be important to put on her egg. They continued to talk about the colors, and then Viera closed the book. Would you like to learn how we get the color on the eggs? Oh, yes, she said. Viera picked up a plastic handle with a tiny brass funnel on the end, the one I showed you before. This is called a kiska. I heat the metal funnel over a flame, and when it's hot enough, I melt the beeswax into the large end. The heated wax flows through the funnel and comes out the tip. Now I use the kiska to draw wax on the egg. The wax sinks into the pores of the shell and keeps the dye from staining that area of the egg. The wax won't let the dye in? No, that's exactly right. And when I'm done covering the area of the egg I want to stay white, it's time to place the egg in the lightest color of dye. When I take it out, I let it dry before I add more wax. Now that layer of dye is protected. And I keep dipping the egg in dye and adding more wax until I have the pattern I want. As Viera applied the wax and dipped the egg from dye to dye, she told Alina traditional stories about Pysanky. One legend tells of an evil monster chained to a hillside who represents the evil in the world. If only a few Pysanky are made, his chains grow loose. But if you make a Pysanka for everyone you love, the chains tighten and the world is safe for another year. Well, his chains will be extra tight when I make Grandma's eggs, I'm sure. Once the egg is covered in wax, it looks dull and gray. So Viera held the egg beside a candle flame until the wax looked shiny and wet. With a gentle stroke, she wiped off the wax with a tissue. With the wax gone, the bright colors stood out. Viera put a small dab of varnish in her hand and then rolled the egg until it was coated in a thin film. The varnish made the egg glisten, and she put it on the rack to dry. When the varnish is dry, we'll blow out the egg. It had taken so much time to wax the egg and to let it sit in each dye and to dry it between the dyes that the whole afternoon was spent on just one egg. And it wasn't even done. She said she'd like to add more. But at least tomorrow it would be her turn to try. The next day it was Alina's turn, and she loved the sweet honey smell that drifted up when she put her kiska full of beeswax over the flame. She placed her kiska firmly against the smooth eggshell and began to draw a long line. But unfortunately a large blob of wax dripped from the side of her kiska and made a lumpy shape right in the middle of her line. "Oh no," she said, "I've wrecked it." Viera just patted her shoulder. "No, use your imagination. Make it into something." "But it won't look like the pattern," said Alina. "No, but no two eggs are ever the same. This is your first try, Alina. Be patient. Remember the spider? She weaves her web with care, and it grows more intricate with each strand. Each egg you make will be better than the one before." Alina picked up her kiska and turned that blob into a daisy. After several days of practice, Alina was ready to make an egg for her grandmother. She chose symbols and colors she knew her grandmother would love. Wheat for the fields that surrounded the farm, an open rose for the wisdom Grandma shares with the family. She used orange for strength and blue for the sky. And like the spider, it took patience. It hadn't looked the way she wanted it to on the first try, or the second, but by the third, she knew Grandma would love it. There's my girl, Grandma said as Alina came in on Easter morning. I have a surprise for you, Alina said, and she gently placed her egg into Grandma's hands. Oh, Alina, it's beautiful. Where did you get it? I helped Aunt Vera with her spring cleaning, and she taught me how to do the Pysanky. You made this? Grandma's eyes glistened. Alina said, I also have another surprise. Because someday when I have children, I'm going to teach them how to make Pysanky, so you don't need to worry that I don't know how to do it, because I think I can learn and do it better each time, which made Grandma's day. What I like about the end of the story too is that she gave borders that can be added to the egg with all their different meanings as well. And if you'd like to learn more about how to make a Pysanky egg, she gives some websites at the end, which I'll include in the notes. But I know that there were ladies around the Morgantown area that did this, and I'm sure there are still some that do. So do look out for that. And think about the symbols on this egg for the wisdom. And there's yellow and orange going around the side, so definitely some strength. I hope you've enjoyed learning more about this, and hope that maybe some of you will also try it.